He was born amid the crumbling edges of the Russian Empire, in the Georgian town of Gori, on December 18, 1878. His name at birth was Iosif Vissarionovich Jugashvili, but history would remember him as Joseph Stalin, the man of steel. His father, Vissarion Jugashvili, was a cobbler and a drunk, known for his violent temper and heavy hands. His mother, Kitavan, was a devout Orthodox Christian who dreamed her son might become a priest. But fate carved a darker path, one soaked in fear, blood, and iron. Education, from first class to final step. Stalin began his education in a local church school in Gori, where he was recognized early for his intelligence. He excelled in reading and memorization and won a scholarship to the Tiflis Theological Seminary, the highest religious institution in the region. It was here that the seeds of rebellion took root. At first, he studied to become a priest. But by the late 1890s, Stalin had begun reading forbidden revolutionary texts, including the works of Karl Marx. His ideas turned from scripture to socialism. He joined underground Marxist circles, began organizing strikes, and immersed himself in anti-Tsarist activism. In 1899, Stalin was expelled from the seminary, officially for missing exams, though unofficially due to his political subversion. He never pursued formal education again. Instead, he became a full-time revolutionary, armed not with holy verses but with the creed of revolution. How he became a dictator. The path from seminary dropout to Soviet autocrat was long, brutal, and steeped in shadows. Stalin began his political career not as a leader, but as a professional agitator. He helped organize strikes, distribute Marxist propaganda, and rob banks to fund the Bolshevik cause. He was arrested multiple times by the Tsarist secret police and exiled to Siberia. But he always returned, hardened, colder, more calculating. In 1903, when the Russian Social Democratic Labor Party split into two factions, Bolsheviks and Mensheviks, Stalin sided with the Bolsheviks and their firebrand leader, Vladimir Lenin. Stalin admired Lenin's ruthless clarity. He proved himself not by theory, but by action, loyal, disciplined, and brutal when needed. When the Russian Revolution erupted in 1917, the Bolsheviks overthrew the provisional government. The old empire collapsed, and civil war followed. Stalin, though not a key figure in the early days, quickly climbed the ranks. He served on the Politburo, managed supplies during the Red Army's campaigns, and showed an uncanny ability to eliminate rivals behind closed doors. After Lenin's death in 1924, a power vacuum gripped the Soviet Union. Many assumed Leon Trotsky, Lenin's fiery right-hand man, would take control. But Stalin had other plans. He presented himself as a humble servant of Lenin's legacy, just a worker among giants. Quietly, he forged alliances, built networks, and played his enemies against one another. He outmaneuvered Trotsky, had him exiled, and later assassinated in Mexico. Between 1924 and 1929, Stalin consolidated power, eliminating his political rivals one by one. He appointed loyalists to key positions and turned the Communist Party into an extension of his will. By the dawn of the 1930s, Stalin ruled the Soviet Union unchallenged, not as a servant of the revolution, but as its master. After acquiring dictatorship, rule over army and country. Once at the top, Stalin ruled the Union of Soviet Socialist Republics like a god of iron and fire. He launched the 5-year plans, massive economic campaigns aimed at rapidly industrializing the Soviet economy. He turned villages into collective farms, ordered peasants to surrender their land, and forced them into state-controlled agriculture. The cost was staggering. Resistance was crushed. Crops were seized. Millions starved. The Holodomor, the man-made famine in Ukraine between 1932 and 1933, alone killed an estimated 3 to 5 million people. He transformed the Soviet Union into a command economy, factories, farms, production, all dictated from the Kremlin. While the West struggled through the Great Depression, Soviet industry surged. Cities rose, steel was forged, and production exploded, but always through fear, exhaustion, and sacrifice. Stalin reigned through terror. He trusted no one, not even his closest allies. In the years 1936 to 1938, the Great Purge swept through the Soviet elite. Old Bolsheviks, military commanders, intellectuals, all were accused of treason, tortured into confessions, and executed or sent to the Gulag. The military was gutted. Tens of thousands of officers were killed. The secret police, the NKVD, ruled through fear, arresting people in the night with quotas of how many enemies of the people to eliminate. Children turned in their parents. Neighbors disappeared. Entire ethnic groups were deported to Siberia. Loyalty meant nothing. Suspicion was fatal. When World War II broke out, Stalin had signed a non-aggression pact with Adolf Hitler, the Molotov-Ribbentrop Pact. He even divided Poland with the Nazis. But in 1941, Hitler betrayed him and invaded the Soviet Union. Caught off guard, Stalin vanished from public for days. But he returned with fury. Under his leadership, the Soviets pushed back. The siege of Leningrad, the Battle of Stalingrad, and the final push to Berlin turned the tide. By 1945, the Soviet Union emerged as one of the world's two superpowers. Yet the victory came with rivers of blood, over 20 million Soviet deaths, civilians and soldiers alike. After the war, Stalin expanded Soviet control over Eastern Europe, building the Iron Curtain. He began the Cold War, a global struggle between communism and capitalism. Internally, he remained paranoid, launching new purges, building labor camps, and tightening control until his final breath. List of bad deeds: the Great Purge executed or imprisoned over 1 million people, including military officers, political rivals, and ordinary citizens. Forced collectivization and the Holodomor caused the deaths of millions of peasants through famine. Created the Gulag system, with vast prison labor camps where millions were worked to death. Deported entire ethnic groups such as the Chechens, Crimean Tatars, and Volga Germans. Destroyed churches, imprisoned priests, and suppressed religious and cultural freedoms. Ordered the assassination of rivals including Leon Trotsky. Ruled by surveillance, fear, torture, and secret police terror. Initially supported Nazi Germany and helped carve up Eastern Europe before being betrayed. List of good deeds. Industrialized the Soviet Union, transforming it from an agrarian nation into a global power. Played a decisive role in defeating Nazi Germany during World War II. Rebuilt much of the Soviet Union after the war despite immense destruction. Expanded access to education, science, and technological development across the Union. These accomplishments were achieved through extreme authoritarian control and the sacrifice of millions, making them inseparable from the terror of his regime. Death date and cause. Joseph Stalin died on March 5, 1953, of a massive stroke at his private dacha near Moscow. He had collapsed the night before, but his guards, too afraid to disturb him, waited hours before calling for help. By the time medical aid arrived, he was paralyzed and dying. He passed away surrounded not by admirers, but by silence and fear. Where buried? Stalin's body was embalmed and initially placed beside Vladimir Lenin in the mausoleum in Red Square. However, in 1961, during the process of de-Stalinization, his body was removed and quietly buried behind the Kremlin wall in a simple grave, far from the honor once afforded to him.